Dre and I were sick this last weekend, and we watched Shrek. It is so good.
No.
So good.
I love
So
Shrek.
good.
It's so funny.
So entertaining.
I never watched it growing up. I don't know why, but I watched it in high school for the first time, and I walked out of the room and I was like, "That's that is such a great movie."
Mm-hmm.
It's really tender too, because especially in the first one, you see him there's these little hints of the theme that he's everyone sees him as this monster, but inside he's just a tender, good dude. Just wants to have a
TJ really
family,
relates to that one right there.
Yeah, sometimes I look
He's
like
like,
an ogre,
I'm not
but
just a buff dude.
I'm not just an ogre.
TJ
you know
has
what I mean?
feelings.
I'm like an onion. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got to peel it back.
Oh
You don't remember?
no.
It's okay.
Y'all, welcome to This is Kingdom.
This is Grace.
This is Talon.
This is TJ.
This week we are going to be studying the talk "Christ-like Poise" by Elder Mark A. Bragg.
Y'all ready for it?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, y'all. I'm going to talk about one of my favorite stories in scriptures, and I love it. I'm obsessed with it. Okay, basically, there's this guy moves to a new town, and he wants to have an impact on the town, on the village, whatever you call it. And so he starts just serving. He's like, where can I help? What can I do? I just want to make an impact. And he just gets a job taking care of sheep. I'm like, what a fun job. Just following around sheep all day,
Story.
And then it gets crazy. Lamanites come, start chasing the sheep all over the place. And the people that he's working with, that Ammon's working with at this time, right? They all start freaking out, right? And what it says, the exact words, is they began to weep exceedingly. This is not a small cry. This is an ugly, intense cry, because they're like, yo, the same thing happened to our brothers, and they got killed by the king. And then I think it says one of the most absurd lines in scriptures. While they're crying because they think they're literally going to die, it says, when Ammon saw this, his heart was swollen within him with joy, y'all. He saw this moment, and he was so hyped. And he didn't see it as a tragedy. He saw it as a total opportunity. And what I want to talk about today is just a line that comes from this talk. And it says, be a good man in a storm. And I have not been able to get those words out of my mind. Because I'm like, man, you look at Ammon, that was a storm. That was a scary situation. And Ammon's like, oh man, we got this. Miracles are coming from this. Something cool is going to happen because of this difficulty right now. And I'm like, that's the kind of man that I want to be. Y'all feel me on that?
I am unquestionably a panicker. I don't, do you guys know that? You surely know that about me. Is that, I don't know if you do, but I am a panicker. And I'm pretty good at putting on a good front. I think lots of people don't know that about me. I'm pretty good at acting like I don't panic, but my insides are my mind has probably 18 million times the amount of thoughts as any other normal human being.
Whoa.
I just am a panicker. I know it in my heart. And I was in Costa Rica last summer. And I was there as a trip leader. I was in charge of these 19 high schoolers, and me and another boy my age were supposed to be guiding this trip. Okay. Which you guys, that's I'm very unqualified for that. That's I had no prior trip planning experience. I'd never been to Costa Rica. I am unqualified. And more than that, I'm very unqualified to be in charge of 19 kids in a foreign country for 20 days. I had no qualifications. And the very first day we were there, we wake up, we get going, it's a great day. And the good news is they pretty much have the schedule already mapped out. You just follow the exact schedule. So I was cruising, we were killing it. It was not a big deal at all. And then we have this big activity in the afternoon, and everyone's stoked out of their mind. It was the highlight of the trip. Everyone was so excited. They had all seen pictures of other groups doing it, and they're we can't wait for this. We're yeah. And the other trip leader, he had been in Costa Rica for a trip before that, and he was you guys, this is the best food we're gonna eat all trip. This is the best experience. So our expectations were through the roof. And right when we get there, we start going, and this guy comes running up to us, and he's the engine won't start. We're not we can't do the activity. It's not gonna work out. It's canceled. And we're well, is there something else we can do? And he's just nope. He's all we do is that, and we can't do it. So sorry, goodbye. And the panic inside of me was probably 8 million to 1. I was just I hardly could function. And I go look at the other guy that's supposed to be in charge of me, and I'm like, this is a mess. I was I don't know what we're gonna do. I wanted to cry. I was acting like it was fine, but I wanted to cry. And he looked at me and he's oh no. He's I'm sure. He's we're literally in Costa Rica. There has got to be something better to do today. And I was I was like, okay,
True.
you're right. I was like, that's a good point. And what ended up happening is we actually, we drove around for a second. And while we were driving around, I remembered that one of the kids on the trip, it was his birthday. And I told the bus driver, I was like, stop. Stop, I have a great idea. And we stopped and we went and got a cake from this dinky corner market. And to be honest, it was the worst cake I've ever seen in my entire life. It was nasty. And we stopped in the middle of the road and everyone got out and we had this huge birthday party in the middle of a random town in Costa Rica. And it was the day ended up being great, whatever. And then we got home that night. And everyone was saying where they saw God in their life. And that boy raised his hand and he was like, I saw God in my life when the boat broke down. And everyone was like, and he's like, because then I realized that God didn't forget my birthday.
Oh my goodness.
You guys, I know. And when I think about someone that's a good man in a storm, I think about my other trip leader in that experience in Costa Rica. Because while I panicked and was the best part of this trip just got ruined, he automatically was like, oh no, I am so excited. His heart was filled with joy when my heart was filled with panic. And choosing joy over panic was the reason that boy was introduced to God that day in Costa Rica. You know?
That's so tender.
So good. Just the two words that are hitting me as you guys are talking are, Talon shared them, the tragedy and opportunity. It's I feel like there should be a t-shirt of something opportunity, maybe in the tragedy or something. I just love this thought. And then I love the phrase life is happening, for us, not to us. And this is so random, but I'm just thinking about every stage of life. There's amazing things and there's things that are pretty tough, I've just been thinking about like single life. It's kind of tough because you're trying to find your person and you're trying to figure out your life and career and everything. But man, you can do whatever you want, man. And same as a teenager, you're oh, I got this peer pressure and this homework and this and that, but you ain't got to pay for nothing, man. I mean, not everybody, different circumstances, but man, I'm just feeling that. I'm feeling this principle, it's so strong. I feel it right now that there could be opportunity in the tragedy, just like Ammon saw, just like Homeboy saw. And I'm just man, how do we switch that? How do we shift that? How do we put on the goggles? How do we put on the glasses to see the situation? Because I think it's seeing it like God sees, right? Seeing more like he does. I'm how do we get there? How do we do that? How do we flip the switch?
Yeah, what I love about Ammon is the reason he was hyped. He's oh, now they can see my power. And then he's oh, or the power that is within me, which was Christ's power. And so I think Ammon in that situation, he wasn't flustered because he knew who was with him. He knew who was on his team, And I just think there's certain times in a game, if you have the best player on your team and you're down, you actually don't stress that much. You're oh no, but I know.
Just give him the ball.
Yeah. I'm we got the man on our team, And I think Ammon understood that. He's I'm rolling with Jesus, He's I got him on my team. I know that he has the winning team. And I've been thinking about it so much, be a good man in the storm. Those words have just been in my head so much. And then I got thinking of Helaman 5:12 that we share a lot, right? That it's build your foundation on Christ. Somebody pointed out to me once, just that it talks about you must build your foundation, that when the devil shall send forth his mighty winds. And he's you notice what it says? I'm what does this say? He says, it says when, not if. And it hit me so hard. In every single one of our lives, there's going to be all kinds of storms. And sometimes they're going to be little rainstorms, but sometimes they're going to be tornadoes. They're going to be big. Yeah. And I the last thing I would want to do, talking about this is downplay people's storms or people's pains. Cause some are actually a lot more serious than maybe a broken down engine, you know, or just a lot more heavy. And it's oh no, that actually is legit. And what we're saying isn't that when those happen, you have to be smiling, life is so good, But I think what it looks like to be a good man in a storm is to not start blaming people, and to not start making all these excuses, or to not get so angry that you actually just hurt yourself from improving. And my favorite example of this is Jesus, and it actually talks about this example in the talk. He's coming to get killed. After he suffered in the Garden of Gethsemane, they're coming to kill him, right? And what made Jesus a good man in that storm isn't that he was smiling and saying everything's fine, but it's that when he was in a storm, he looked at the man who had his ear chopped off and said, I'm actually just going to help this guy. I'm not going to like make excuses. I'm not going to blame. I'm just going to heal in my storm. I'm going to reach out. Like I'm going to keep loving regardless of what's happening.
And if I could just say one little thing in that is like, I feel like Ammon and Jesus and the trip leader, one common thing, they all had purpose. Like they all had a clear purpose they're doing. And I think with that purpose combined with my purpose is teamed up with Jesus, they might not know exactly what it's going to look like, but they know it's going to be okay. So I just want to share that.
No, that's beautiful. And I think I can't stop thinking about that like everyone's storms are going to be look very different, and all of them, like that's the purpose of a storm. Like every single storm in real life is very different, right? But there's something so powerful of that thought. Like it's not about the storm, it's about the person that you're going to go through the storm with. And like I think it's true. Like I think a team is a really good example. Like you look at the Lakers, like their regular season was absolutely average, and then all of a sudden
Don't use
you're
the
like,
Lakers. They got swept. What are you talking about right now?
Listen. But before that, no Lakers fan was worried going into playoffs. Why?
I'm not a LeBron fan. I can't help you with this
You tell us,
example.
Grace.
No, me
Tell us, Grace.
either. Me either. But nonetheless, no Lakers fan was worried because they were like, "Oh, LeBron's on our team. Like it's not a big deal." And it makes me think of the actual storm in the Bible, the one where they're like all these fishermen are on a boat and the storm comes and it's crazy. And like a storm like on a boat, like that's automatically scary for me because I don't really spend a lot of time on a boat. But like a storm like on a boat in the sea where a fisherman is freaked out, like that means like it's not like little waves. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not the type of like that's like a big deal. Like they are panicking, they are stressed out of their mind. And Jesus is sleeping. And that almost seems so rude, you know? Like for real, in the biggest storm of all time, you're sleeping. Like you don't even care about the storm. And like that's what all the disciples say. Like they're livid. They're like, you're kidding. Like we are absolutely panicking and you're falling asleep. And one thing David Butler like taught me a while ago is like, oh, Jesus sleeping wasn't because he didn't care. It was because he wasn't intimidated. And I think that there's something so beautiful in realizing like there's going to be storms big enough that you're just simply going to panic, especially if you're me. I'm going to panic. Like that's just true. But maybe when I feel like Jesus doesn't care about the storms, it's actually just Jesus saying, hey, I'm not intimidated by this one. You forgot who's on your team. Like the odds may be stacked against you. You might be the biggest underdog, but don't worry. Like I'm on your boat. You can be good in the storm because I'm standing next to you. You know?
Yeah. Just to end, TJ, were you gonna say something before that? Okay, just to end, I just want to talk to like anybody who actually feels like they're in a storm right now, because I would bet there's a lot of people listening to us that are in a storm. And I just want to say, like, number one, storms always end. They do. I've never seen a storm that doesn't end, you know? Number two, like, Jesus is bigger than the storm. He is. I believe that with my whole heart. So we love you guys. Be a good man, be a good woman in the storm.
He is always near me, though I do not see him there. And because he loves me dearly, I am in his watchful care. So I'll be the kind of person that I know I'd like to be if I could see the Savior standing nigh, watching over me.
See you next week.